And at least I can talk about the part of it that I'm ready to talk about, and the rest I won't talk
Exactly.
about.
And
I
you
got
can
to
even
distance.
allude to parts that you're not ready to talk about yet, because it is that traumatizing, and let them sit with that. You don't have to go into the details.
Yeah.
Right?
And you also don't want to be a robot. So you do want,
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
if you have emotions, you have emotions. You don't want to just like, and then I didn't do this. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
so the emotions are fine, right? And you want to elicit those emotions in your audience, because that's, people don't remember what you tell them. People remember how you make them feel.
Truth.
And also remember, if you're going to elicit a lot of that heavy stuff, you want to do so more in the beginning. But in the beginning, so when Sheena was talking about right and left, when you're talking about the past, you want to be more on the right side. And then when you talk about the future, more on the left side.
Right.
Because when people see it, in people's eyes, the past is to the left, the future's on the right. So when you're on the right, you're in their left, right? So anyway, you start
Thank
off
you.
in the beginning of the speech. You also have to bring it to the empowerment portion, whatever you want that to leave the audience with, the hope, the inspiration. Because just getting people to feel those heavy emotions and then leaving them with it, it
He's
doesn't,
mean.
right. They don't feel empowered to do anything with it, right?
And
No.
Christine, for me, I always end with, but look at me now. Like, my past doesn't have to be my future or your future, but don't discount the people that are there, right? So it's very empowering, and I'm always focused on the future, not the past. So yeah, take them to a good place. Don't leave them in the dark.
Yeah.
Show them how to get out.
You can always use the metaphor of turning the page or writing a new chapter. This is where mentally people are like, okay, I can turn the page. I can write the
Thank
next
you.
chapter. Okay.
And people in the replay, don't forget that he just underlined, we're not negating emotion. The emotion is what gives it that fuel, that charge. And you want to have a level of that, because that is what inspires and motivates and uplifts. And you look at some of the best speakers, we mentioned Les Brown, but my favorite speaker is Joel Weldon, and co-founder National Speakers Association. He maintains a level of emotional power from beginning to end when he speaks. But it's not because he's feeling dysregulated emotionally. It's the total opposite. He's feeling very controlled emotionally, but he's bringing you in or connecting you to an elevated sense of potential or empowerment about your own state of being, and that's when it's powerful. So yeah, by no means negate emotion, but make sure you fuse it and connect it appropriately to get the best results.
Could I add to that, Drew? I mean, I think that if I have a phrase, and again, I should have my filter on tonight, but I don't. Are you a keynoter or a trauma noter? And there's a huge difference. And if your keynote has a level of, as Sandy was sharing, a level of trauma and emotion, you have to have, I believe, a very clever framework. A framework so slick that you can actually highlight what the trauma is. I can remember when perhaps you've, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well,
You're good.
I thought I went off. Yeah, I could remember when perhaps you too have experienced, and you say it in a sentence. The trauma is in one sentence or two sentences. And a lot of your questions will be rhetorical. Have you experienced that? Let me share with you what I did. Here's how I overcame this. Perhaps you could do this too. And then you tell them a couple of points that they could do and then you can go on and share something else. That is how I would teach trauma to the people that I work with, so that it becomes interesting and people are curious about what you're going to say next.
Just know
For
your
sure.
audience, Christine, because look at Kevin. His trauma story is his anchor of his speaking career, right? And it's definitely not just one sentence. So Jim has had his hand up forever.
Yeah.
So gotta
Go ahead,
let
Jen.
No, I mean, this is perfect timing. Next week, a week from today, I'll be doing a breakout session at a business conference, and the whole theme of the conference is fears of business owners. And I'm talking about three. I'm talking about fear of failure, fear of the imposter syndrome, which I call the fear of being found out, and the fear of missing out. But when I talk about imposter, I actually talk about, so I'm a family doc. 33 years ago, when I started out, I was in the ICU, and I tell about how I didn't even recognize the name Dr. Hyde. I was that, I mean, it was part of, I was a newbie, but it was part the imposter syndrome. I couldn't believe I was actually a doctor. And how the nurse, I told the nurse, I said, you'll get my attention if you call me Jim. She said, no, I'm not going to call you Jim. I'm going to call you Dr. Hyde. And I break it up into naming the fears, claiming them, owning up to them, and then taming them. And in the taming section, I say, you know, I learned a lesson from that. What I learned was what she was saying without saying it is, dude, we're in the ICU. You got sick people. They don't need Jim. You got nurses. They don't need Jim. You got lab techs, respiratory therapists. None of them need Jim. You know what they all need? They need Dr. Hyde with all his knowledge and training to show up now. And when I say that, I've been practicing this twice a day. I still get choked up when I say that, because it's like, that was a big deal. That was 32 years ago. But then I follow that up with a story and I say, okay, a year and a half later, I had another opportunity to just succumb to the imposter, because little resident me is disagreeing with the experienced cardiologist. And I tell a story about, I was right. I stood my ground, and it worked out better for the patient that I didn't just crumble. But then I also say, does that mean I have conquered the imposter and I never ever see it again? No, that would be awesome, but no. But yeah, I think it was David that said, don't leave that that emotion draws attention, but you don't want to leave them stuck in, especially a negative emotion. So I was told, I'm giving this talk about three fears, and I'm using a baseball analogy, and I talk about the three fears, then I go, okay, technically this talk is over, but guess what? If I end now, you are stranded on third base.
Nice.
No one wants to be stranded on third base. So how do we bring
like
this
that.
home? Well, okay, the way to get to home plate, there's actually a fourth fear that underlies all of these, and it's the fear of pain. So let's talk about the fear of pain. And that gets me to actually my pitch, my audience participation in something, to get them to kind of show how I do coaching and how I help you learn yourself, because the biggest cause of pain is acting like someone you're not.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Oh boy.
bringing it to resolution. I also, I mean, I love music, and I've heard people talk about that. And like, when you hit a note, everyone knows there is another note that needs to follow to resolve the chord and end the song. And if you don't hit that note, even people who don't know music are like, ooh, there's something missing. So bring it to that, hit that resolution chord when you're speaking.
This is gold, Jim. Gold.
That was amazing, Drew. We got to
Wonderful.
figure out a hockey metaphor.
Yeah,
We're in
we'll work on
Canada.
that.
It's more hockey than baseball.
We'll work on that. We'll work on that.
That
But
was
that
was
amazing.
Tied
perfectly
after
Out of
three
the park.
periods, you still got shootout.
That's
Yeah,
right. There you
okay.
go.
Sudden death.
Don't end there.
That's not
That's right.
positive. Okay, no.
Jim, I just loved what you said there. And like, I've worked with so many speakers who are so flabbergasted and dismayed and disappointed that they're not getting rebooked and they're not getting, called, and they're just like, what's going on here? But they're not helping them get to home plate. They might be helping them get to third base because they must be doing something right. But if you don't bring them that home plate, then it doesn't hit home. It doesn't resonate. It doesn't come full circle. It's just not going to be complete. And it's not just a cherry on top. It's the fundamentals. So it by no means overlooked. Thank you for sharing all that. That was great.
Sure.